Good afternoon, and thank you for joining another Q&A session. So today we're going to be talking about some of the best home equip you can get started that's not going to break the bank. And we're then going to talk a little bit about if you want to get into strengthening around your knees, particularly squats, but you've got knee pain, how do we go about doing that without flaring it up? And then will lifting weights cause an injury? And in the clinic, particularly, that's something I hear often as a stumbling block or a thing that is a barrier to getting started in the first place. Is the belief that heavy weights are dangerous and they could cause an injury. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. And then we'll talk through any answers to questions that you might have that you ask me live on air. And with that in mind, I just wanted to ask you, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to strength training as an older adult? Is there anything that's stopping you from getting started? Are there any sort of stumbling blocks you're finding? This is your chance to ask me any questions that you have that you would like to hear the answer to. So if you are watching this live, then if you're on YouTube, you can use the chat feature on the right hand side. Or if you're watching on Facebook, to just leave a comment and they'll get flashed up to me. I will answer those the best I can in the session. And if it's not something I can answer straight away, then I will answer that in a future week's Q&A session. So these are always at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday lunchtime. You can watch them live, or even if you can't watch live, but you still want to ask a question, still ask that question. I will then send out the recordings, and I'll always put a timestamp to the questions I answered afterwards, so you'll be able to see exactly where your question is, jump straight to that, and you'll find your answer. As always, there's only one thing I ask in return. So if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure you're subscribed to Never Told to Lift. And if you could give the video a quick like, so hit the thumbs up button underneath the video. Those two things really do help the video get spread out to more people, and hopefully between us we can inspire a few more people to get started on their strength training journey. So let's hide those. So the first question I had came in this week was, what is the best equipment to start with at home that isn't too expensive? Now, understandably, there's quite a few people who don't necessarily want to go to the gym to do their workout. Sometimes they just feel a bit intimidated by the gym, and particularly if you haven't started yet and you're not feeling confident with the exercises and the weights, people would rather start at home. Sometimes it's just a case of not having the time to get to the gym, and it's far easier to do it at home. So doing it at home is absolutely fine. There's plenty of people who do really well from that. If you are looking to build strength, you are going to need to push your muscles to the point where you're getting close to muscular fatigue. And in order to do that, sometimes body weight exercise isn't going to be enough, and you do have to use some form of external resistance to create the sufficient force to work against in order to get strength as the outcome of that exercise. Now, the good news is that doesn't have to look like gym equipment. Just to get started, you don't have to start buying equipment. If you want to kind of just start pushing yourself a little bit more than you are with body weight, then there are things around the house you can use to make it more challenging. So a nice easy way is using like a backpack or rucksack and filling it with things that have some weight to them. So I normally suggest bottles of water, because if you know the volume of the water that you've got there, you know the weight of it. So basically a litre of water is a kilogram of weight. So having a 2 litre bottle of water is 2 kilograms of weight. You can fit some of those in a rucksack. You can either have it on your back, or you can actually have the bag around your front, depending on where you find the distribution of weight is more comfortable for you. And then you can start to say do your squats, or you could do other exercises that you would normally be doing body weight, and you've just got that additional weight to use. In lockdown, I actually discovered that what's really useful is bottles of screen wash. So bottles of screen wash are 5 litres, and so we know that's 5 kilograms already. They have a nice little handle to them, so you can hold one in each hand relatively easily, because without the handles, the bigger the bottle of water gets, the more cumbersome it is. And if it's not in a bag and you're trying to hold it, it's then awkward as you're trying to do the exercise. So the bottles of screen wash, nice handles that they have there. You can even fit 2 of them really nicely into a backpack, or at least a backpack I had anyway, and that was then 10 kilograms in the bag straight away. And if I had another 2, I could have 1 in each hand. I suddenly got 20 kilograms of weight that I could do squats with without even needing to look at dumbbells or any other equipment. So yeah, heavy books are also quite useful, but yeah, lots of things. I did have a patient once in the clinic who told me that they'd had some building work done and they'd finished with that, and he had a half a bag of sand in the garage, and what he did was he got some smaller carrier bags and got some scales, and he filled each of these bags up with 2 kilograms of sand and then tied them up and taped around them to stop the sand spilling out. But he had multiple 2 kilogram bags of sand, which he could then put in the rucksack, or sometimes he'd put in pockets and things. But he could then manipulate how much weight he had to how challenging you need the exercise to be. So you can get creative with it, and you can use things around the house to create the challenge you need. But if you are looking to get started at home, you're probably going to want to start to look down the route of more conventional gym-based equipment that you might have at home. Now, in terms of the equipment you might have that doesn't cost too much and is a good starting point to see whether you want to kind of progress and then maybe get something better later on, I normally suggest people start with a set of resistance bands and some adjustable dumbbells. So what I mean by adjustable dumbbells, they're the ones where you have the bar and then you have weight plates, and you can choose to slide some of the weight plates on, and some of them have like a spring clip that you can put on each side, or some have like a screw cap that screws on to secure those weight plates nicely. And then once you finish that exercise with those weights, you can then take the caps off and then put more weight on for the next exercise, or you can take some weight off if you need to. But they're then really versatile because you don't need to have multiple sets of dumbbells in the house that then take up lots of space. You've just got this one set. And I had a quick look before coming on, and on Amazon you can get a 20 kilogram set for about £45 or just over. I think it's £46.94. And given that's up to 20 kilograms worth of weight spread over 2 dumbbells, that's a good amount of weight, and that's actually not too bad in terms of value for money either. Given that a gym membership might cost you that for a month, but now you've got that weight that you can use for forever, really. You're probably going to need to add to that later as you do progress, but to get started, it's a really good starting point. And then resistance bands are really good. I tend to like the really kind of long loop ones, and you can get these door anchors that mean you can wedge them in a door, and then you've got a loop to attach a band to, and then you can do exercises where you pull in or you rotate across your body. And you can get a set of 3 of those with the door anchor for about £15. If not, you can just get a band on its own, normally for about £6, and the door anchors are around £3-4. But having a set of 3 different resistances is good, a good starting point. So between the bands and the set of adjustable dumbbells, for about £65-70, you've got all you're going to need that will keep you going for several months. And then, like I say, you might just need to get a few more weight plates on the adjustable dumbbells. You don't need to buy the bars again, but you can just find on eBay or on Amazon, you can find additional plates there. You might want a gym mat for comfort if there's any exercises where you're laying down on the floor, but other than that, you don't really need much more. The adjustable dumbbells can start to get a little bit awkward as you're trying to change the weights from one to the next, and sometimes actually having a few different options of the molded dumbbells can be better, or you can start to push the finances a bit more, and you can get these ones where you just turn a dial and it selects a weight, you pick it up, and you can put it back and turn a dial again and pick it up, and within seconds you can change the weight. But they're coming on to 150, 200 kilograms per dumbbell, and that's for one individual dumbbell rather than a set of dumbbells. So they are a lot more expensive, But yeah, in terms of getting going in the first place, you can find those adjustable dumbbells for about £45 with a set of bands for £15, and that's a really good start point. So if you are looking on the Never Too Old to Lift website, so that's nevertooldtolift.com, there is a recommended equipment tab. So it's often worth have a look on there, and then I've got a list of equipment that I try and keep up to date, and that'll take you through to Amazon where you can find that equipment there. Just had a comment from Maggie here. So Maggie says, for saving money on home equipment, Facebook Marketplace is great. Lots of new stuff going at bargain prices if you don't mind waiting a while for the stuff you want to come up. So yeah, totally agree there. I've bought stuff on Marketplace before, and it's good. Obviously, you then got to go and often go and collect it. Same if you're buying off eBay. Postage for weights would be astronomical. So Amazon, generally that's built in if you're buying new stuff. But yeah, if you're looking for secondhand stuff, you can generally get some bargains on Marketplace. So yeah, thanks Maggie, and hi, thanks for watching again, Maggie. I appreciate you coming on. Oh, let me just delete that. So that is there. Let me take that question off. Then next question I had was, how do I adapt squats around my painful knee? So this was from a patient that came in the clinic this week, and they've not really done much in the way of strength training before, but they know that, or they've heard that by doing squats, or by building strength around their knee, it's going to help their knee pain. And theirs was arthritic knees. So yeah, a lot of evidence show that increased strength helps to reduce the symptoms of arthritis in the knee. But how do you build strength when your knee is painful and anything you try causes pain, and particularly squats? Because most people find this. Squats are the things they need to do, but they cause pain, so they end up avoiding the squats, just work on all the other things that help. And then they find that they're just this kind of stuck in this catch-22. So it's something I've covered before, but I thought it's been several months since I last talked about this on the Q&A session, so it's worth revisiting again. But in terms of squats, there's a few ways we can adapt a squat to make it more comfortable and still be able to build strength. So the first and simplest way is to try and reduce the depth of the squat. Often it's the deeper you go into the squat that becomes a more painful range of motion. And actually, there's often a threshold of depth you can go to. So often if you start off, you can get some bend at the knee without causing much pain. It's only when you go past that kind of threshold and you go deeper than that, that you start to then aggravate the knees. And that's going to be quite individual for different people. So you got to kind of explore it a little bit yourself. But what you can start to do is find different surfaces. So in the gym, I've got one of these, they're called plyo boxes. So I can turn it on one side and it's 20 inches. I can turn it on another side, it's 24, and another side it's I think it's 30 inches. And I've also got the benefit of adjustable plinth in there that I can get people to stand up and sit down to. But what you can start to do is find a surface, either in the gym or at home, that you can squat down to and sit to and then stand back up, that is in that comfortable range. So for most people, a dining chair might then be, if you've got knee pain, it's going to be too low. But the edge of a sofa is quite a nice one, or quite often beds are a bit higher, or you can pile up a few pillows. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to sit down to anything. You can just do a little break at the knees and back up again. But what we can start to do is, in that comfortable range of motion, we can actually start to add weights to it and really challenge that range of motion that you have got available to you. And as long as you're pushing close to muscular fatigue within that range of motion, your strength will improve. Not as much as if you're going deeper, but if you can't go deeper without pain, then that's not an option for you. So yeah, keep to the comfortable range of motion, add the weight and the resistance till you're slowly pushing to fatigue. And then you'll find that over time, if you take the weight back off, you're actually able to, the increased strength you have allows you to go explore deeper depths into your squat. So that's the first one. The next one is that the further forward your knee goes over the toe as you go into a squat, the more pain or the more stress it places on the knee. And for someone with knee pain, that's then more like the more stress you place on the knee is more likely to cause you a flare up or cause you to be in more pain there. So there's ways that you can squat where you keep your knee either directly above the toe or even you're sitting back into it, and it means you're going to have to hold on to something. So in the gym they've got these suspension trainers, the TRX ones. They're kind of those yellow and black straps with handles that secure to something, and if you lean back into that, you if you let go, you would end up falling backwards. So you have to be holding on to something, but you can have your shin stays vertical, and then you're sitting back into it, and so you can often get into a squat position and back up again, like now with no pain, because your knees aren't traveling over your toes. And often people find that's a lot more comfortable. And then obviously now your hands are holding the suspension trainer, you can't hold weight, so that then becomes a difficulty. But some gyms have a weighted vest, and you can put that on. Um, Sometimes you can increase the weight that the leg's having to deal with by doing single leg versions of that, but that's another option there. And then one of the things I really wanted to sort of talk about that's quite a useful concept to understand is this concept of training around pain. So this is a great infographic that's done by someone called Tony Camella that's well worth following if you get a chance. But he's kind of shown that when we do deadlifts and when we do squats, we're doing some exercise on both the quads and the glutes. So that is going to put in some pressure through the knee and some pressure through the hip. And they're all doing hip. So the pressure for all of them is both through the hip and the knee. But as we move to the exercises towards the right-hand side of the screen, we're putting far more pressure through the knee and a lot less through the hip. And as we then start to go to the other side, so the deadlift side, on the left-hand side, we're putting a lot more through the hip and a lot less through the knee. So if you're someone, and most people, if they're doing a squat with a barbell, they might be looking at a barbell squat, which is a bit confusing here, but it's the high bar squat and the low bar squat that are the forms of back squat. And the high bar is where it sits slightly higher on your upper traps at the top there, and the bar sits across. Low bar squat, it sits a lot lower, but it's still kind of on your back. And with them being on your back, it allows you to lean forwards into it, and the bar isn't going to go anywhere. So it allows you to get a lot more hip movement in along with the squat. So your hip is taking, or the muscles around the hip, the glutes, are taking a lot of the strain off of the quads, so there's less pressure through the knees. Whereas if you're going into a front squat where the bar is here, if I lean forward, the bar might fall off me. So it means I have to sit a lot more upright, which means my hips aren't doing as much of the movement, which means the glutes are doing less of the work, which now is more on my knees. So if you're someone who's been doing a front squat and it's painful on the knees, simply by going slightly more towards the left-hand side of that table there and going to more to one of the forms of back squat might help. But equally, if all the forms of squats on that right-hand side of the screen are too much for your knee, even at a low depth, actually starting to explore some of the things like the sumo deadlift or the trap bar deadlift. So the trap bar deadlift is that kind of hexagon bar sometimes that you see. That is more, it's a hip dominant exercise, but it's still stressing the knee and it's still challenging the quads. So it's not as much as it would be if you're doing a squat, but you'll still get strength benefits to the quads. That if you do that for long enough, you can then start to go back and explore the different forms of back squat and front squat there at a later point with less weight again. So I won't kind of dwell on this too much, but that's a nice kind of graph to remember, that is that you can manipulate how much the hip and the knee does based on which exercise you choose. And just because it is a form of deadlift doesn't mean the quads aren't getting worked at all, and it doesn't mean the knees aren't going to benefit from it. But ideally, if we can, if the pain allows, we do want to get some form of squat in there eventually. But for the short term, I often get people doing some form of deadlift, and they can actually deadlift really heavy and not get any knee pain. And the confidence that provides is massive as well. But then it then carries over into then later on being able to explore squats later on, and then suddenly the weight that we're using doesn't seem the scary concept anymore. It's not the weight, it's more the exercise. So yeah, there's a little bit around knee pain and squats there. But if you do have knee pain and you avoid squats, there are ways to modify the squat to start. And if you need a bit more information or feel like you need a bit more support than this, then do go see a physiotherapist or another rehab-based professional sports therapist, and even good chiropractors and osteopaths that are exercise focused will be able to help with this, at least to get you started, and then you can gradually progress later on. If you are looking for more support as well, I do have a free ebook on how to create your own strengthening program around your current ability levels and any kind of painful joints that you might have currently. So that's completely free. It's nevertoiltolift.com/start-here, and the link is in the description below. And all you'll need to put is your first name and an email in there, and you can get that book there. If you don't like the screen, you want more of a physical copy and you're going to get more from that, then it's available on Amazon as a paperback. You just need to search Never Told to Lift on Amazon and you'll find that there. The other thing, and I forgot to input a picture for it, but on Wednesday next week I am running a 1 hour presentation on how to start strength training as an older adult. So it's going to go through some of the objections you might have. Using some of the people I've worked with, I'm going to kind of challenge those objections and show you they're not reasons not to start, they're just things we might need to be cautious of, but they're certainly, and generally anyone can find a start point to be able to work from. So it's going to then give you some actionable steps on how you can get started. So it's a lot more structured than these Q&A sessions. It's got slides and videos that I'll go through, but that's a completely free 1 hour workshop. You do need to register for it in advance. So again, the link to that is in the description below, but if you're interested in hearing more, that's going to be at 1 o'clock next Wednesday. So I'll still do the Q&A session at 12, and then shortly after we'll go straight into the that online presentation or webinar, which will last roughly about an hour long. So yeah, register below if you're interested in that. And then I've got one more question that I was going to go through today. And if you are watching live and you've got any questions, please use this opportunity to ask those questions now. If you are watching the recording, then do still leave comments with questions, and I will keep checking back so that I can then refer to those in next week's Q&A session. So the other question I had from another patient in the clinic this week was they knew that again, it's someone else who wanted to start doing strength training because they've heard good things about it, but they've also kind of got this idea in their head that lifting heavy weights is just asking for problems and it's going to cause them an injury. And again, this is something I hear a lot, so I thought is worth covering again, is that because of the fact they are heavyweights and it's new to a lot of people, there is this fear that heavyweights is a dangerous thing to do, and it's something that we should avoid, particularly as we get older, and we should just stick to the things that feel safe, like Pilates and swimming and yoga, and again, all great forms of exercise that I suggest that people sort of consider adding to their routine. But the problem with them is they're not necessarily going to build strength. And as we're starting to find now, the thing that most people are starting to suffer from as they move into older age is the fact their strength is declining. And we're finding now that that is a loss of strength is a kind of precursor to a lot of musculoskeletal complaints like painful arthritis or the pain associated with arthritis. But also often other things like increased risk of falls, which then leads to increased risk of hip fractures, and that could be a period of hospitalisation and mobilisation. And anyone who has a hip fracture over the age of 60 I think it's about 20% end up in long-term care within a year and don't come back out again. So there's that side of things, but also things like diabetes, dementia, cardiovascular disease, and respiratory diseases. A loss of muscle strength tends to be prevalent with those diseases as well. So it could be because of those diseases, it's created an environment for the loss of muscle strength to kick in, or it could be because of the loss of muscle strength, it's created an environment for some of those diseases. So it's probably a little bit of chicken and egg. That it's more the fact they just feed into each other. So I would say if we can build strength, we're trying to prevent those things being a problem. So we're reducing the risk of falls, reducing those diseases coming on, reducing the pains associated with arthritic changes in the body. But in order to build strength, we're going to have to push the muscles to fatigue, which again, I know it's a repetition I keep saying, but it's the main concept I want people to take away from a lot of these videos. And exercising with resistance to build strength is we have to push to fatigue. So we have to then start using weights that might be heavy to you. And remember, heavy to one person isn't going to be heavy for another person. And heavy doesn't have to look like what you see on TV and the powerlifters do in the world's strongest man, because anyone who's not trained before that goes into trying to lift 100 kilograms when they've never done it before, you probably will lead to an injury. There are risks associated with lifting weights, but if we stick to what you started with, gradually start to add a bit of resistance and then keep gradually progressing and listening to your body and adapting your kind of rate of progress dependent on what your body's telling you, then we can avoid the risks or mitigate the risks associated with lifting weights. But we're going to create a robust, resilient body that's going to deal with the demands of your everyday life and also the different activities and sports that you might like to do, as well as being active in the gym or Pilates. And a lot of people play sports like tennis and golf and things that involve a lot more activity. And if you've got the strength, you've got a better suspension system throughout your legs, and they're going to absorb a lot of the force, and you're going to protect your joints from a lot of the injuries that could occur if you're not haven't got the strength to kind of do those. So yes, there's a risk of injury to weights, but there's far more of a risk if you're not doing weights. And there's a nice quote from someone that's worth following again called Brett Contreras on social media, and he says, if you think lifting weights is dangerous, try being weak. Being weak is dangerous. And again, it's for all those reasons I said before, that being weak is associated with far more negative outcomes than the lifting weights. But I realise, again, it's a scary thing to get started with. So again, if you do want some help with that, then do register for my talk next week at 1:00. And even if you can't make it, do still register, because there'll be a replay that you can watch afterwards. Or if you're then looking to get started, then again, do use the free ebook. And again, the link is in the description. But for now, that is all that I had prepared. So if there are any last minute questions, please feel free to ask those now. One thing I thought I'd just mention while I'm waiting there is one other option, as well as the ebook and the kind of paperback copy, is I've got an online course called Stronger for Life that is a more interactive way of going through all that content. So it's the same kind of format and principles, but just a much more interactive way, and you'll get access to me via a group Zoom call with all the members of the course, where we can come on, have a discussion about any sticking points. You can use it as accountability, and you can kind of share your successes with everybody else as they share theirs. So it's a real nice community feel. So if that's something of interest, then it's nevertaught-to-lift.com/course. And again, you can find that link in the description below. But for now, I think that's all the questions that we have. So I will see you again next week at 12:00 for the Q&A. And again, that talk, how to start strength training as an older adult, is going to be at 1:00 shortly afterwards. But for now, I will see you next week. Thank you.